First, the measles outbreak posing a unique challenge to summer camps.
Thousands of Georgia children will attend camp this summer, but while other areas across the country are requiring private summer camps to only accept children who have been vaccinated, the law is not as strict in Georgia.
John Sherrick walks us through what parents need to know before dropping your children off.
Sun, fun, and measles at summer camps in Georgia? Not likely right now for many reasons. The chances may be no better or worse for a summer camp measles outbreak in Georgia than they are in the schools.
But there is plenty of room under Georgia law for private summer camp operators here to come up with their own rules about accepting or banning any children who have not had a measles vaccination. According to the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, summer camps in Georgia can choose if they want to get a state license. A license that includes a requirement that all children have their vaccinations up to date. But even children in state-licensed summer camps in Georgia can be exempt from having vaccinations for religious or medical reasons. Unlicensed summer camps can choose to require vaccinations or not. Then there are the summer camps in Georgia, some licensed, some unlicensed, that earn accreditation from ACA, the American Camp Association. They have to comply with ACA's standards of quality. There are currently 43 ACA-accredited summer camps in Georgia, and all of those accredited camps are required to accept only children who have had their vaccinations. What are the odds that an unvaccinated child will be attending a summer camp in Georgia? Here are the numbers from the state of Georgia's vaccinated school children. More than 500,000 Georgia school children are up to date with their vaccinations. A bit over 2% of them, fewer than 10,000 children, are unvaccinated because of religious or medical exemptions. How many of those unvaccinated children will get into summer camps in Georgia along with vaccinated children? And children do attend summer camps in Georgia from other states where the vaccination requirements and rates may be different.